You really don't need to edit your photos on a computer to get professional results. The speed and convenience of Lightroom Mobile is incredibly handy when you're either out and about on the go or when you just don't feel like sitting down at a desk. So today I want to share with you my top 9 Lightroom Mobile tips and tricks to help you get better results on your photos and to help you level up dramatically as a photo editor. Let's first kick things off with understanding how to sharpen your image correctly. So if we open up Lightroom Mobile here and we've already opened up our image, you want to make your way over to the Detail tab and then into Sharpening. Now looking at this tool, you would think all you have to do to sharpen your photo correctly is to increase sharpening and you're ready to go. However, there is one other step you definitely should be aware of, and that's masking. And it's not the masking tool in general, we'll get to that just a little bit later, but it is adding a mask to your sharpening tool. And the way this is done is coming down to the masking slider here, and if I just increase it or decrease it, you don't really see any change happening. And that's because when you slide the masking slider to the right, what you're doing is reducing the amount of sharpening you're adding to the overall image, and you're only making sure that you're sharpening the parts of your image that are already sharp and contrasty and should be sharpened. For example, let me show you what I mean. What we're going to do is tap and hold on our image, and then we're going to move the masking slider. Now, compared to before, things look a lot different now. And as you can see, as I move the masking slider to the right, we're getting a lot more black in our image and we're having a lot less white. Now, the white parts of the masking slider, when I move this around, are referring to the parts that are going to be sharpened. And then as you can see, as I reduce this, the whole image becomes white, and therefore we're turning masking off, and now we're sharpening our whole shot. Now, this isn't super ideal, especially for an image like this, because you can clearly see we have an out of focus blurry background that we really wouldn't want to add any sharpening to. So all we're going to do is tap and hold on our image again and start to increase the masking slider. And as you can see, we pretty much want to get it to a point where we have none of the background selected. I would say masking at about 95% looks pretty good to me. And then we can go in here and fine tune our sharpening slider to make sure the parts of our image that should be sharp are staying sharp. I want to let you in on a little secret that I've been using for years to make my mountains, landscapes, and cityscapes look a little bit bigger and a little bit more dramatic. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So let's make our way over to this image here, which is a great shot of this mountain. However, I'm sure we could make it look just a little bit taller. So what we're going to do is open up our crop tool here and then make our way over to the little pencil in the bottom right hand corner. And then we're going to come down to aspect. You can already see I've actually added it to this image already. But if we reduce the aspect, I find that it sort of like flattens out the image and stretches it horizontally. And if we increase the aspect, you can see things kind of get pushed in from the side and it stretches out our image vertically, which is exactly the look I'm after, especially when I'm editing landscape photos. One little tip to add here is to make sure that you have this constrain crop toggle enabled, which means if we go crazy here, and as you can see, if I max out the aspect to 100, on the far right hand corner and left hand corner, the bottom side of our shot, you can see that we've got a little bit of white starting to come into our shot because we're squeezing the image so much. So if we have that constrain crop toggle enabled, what it will do, it will automatically sort of zoom in on our image right until the edge of that white spot to make sure that when we export our photo, we're not getting any weird white bars on our shot. Let's now move into Automasks. Now, what on earth do I mean when I talk about Automasks? Well, there is a feature inside of Lightroom Mobile that allows you to select certain parts of your image automatically and then make changes to that part of your shot. However, this gets you only about half of the way there, as once the auto mask has been created, you then need to also understand what settings you need to change. But I do have a very good solution for you, so let me run you through exactly that. What I'm going to do is open up my preset tab right here and then come into my user presets, and then you can see I have a whole load of strange, what I would call strange name presets like background blur, blue water, brighten subject, large change, darken background, so on and so forth. So what I've done here is I've created a set of 24 Lightroom presets that uses Lightroom's AI tools to analyze your image and then make changes depending on the preset that you select. So I want to show you exactly how these presets work so you can understand just how easy editing in Lightroom Mobile can be. So let's make our way up to, I'm not sure, let's say darken background. If I'm looking at this shot, I'd say the background of it was pretty bright. Now that has just automatically masked out our subject and then made everything behind our subject darker. So it instantly looks great. But the really cool thing about these presets is that you can stack them on top of each other, giving you a near endless amount of customization when it comes to how you want your image to look. So let's not stop at darken background. Let's also add a dramatic vignette vertical. I'd say that looks pretty good as well. And then let's also do maybe background blur right at the top, where we are just going to tap on that. And then that leads me in to tip number 4, which is actually preset intensity sliders. So this works for any presets, not just these AI masking presets. However, what this allows you to do is tap on this little tool right here. So as you can see, I've got background blur selected, and then there's a line with a weird circle in the middle of it. We're going to tap on that. And now what I can do is I can reduce, or I can add more of that preset to this shot. So as I add more of this preset, the background gets blurrier behind our subject. Maybe not the best example for this photo. However, I'll show you with an even better example. So let's do darken background again, and then open up our preset intensity slider. And now, as you can see, as I increase this, behind our subject, it gets darker, and as I decrease this, it becomes lighter again. I'm gonna reset this back to 0 just by double tapping on the slider and then hitting the tick in the bottom right corner. However, keep this in mind for when you're using Lightroom presets, especially if you're having trouble getting them to look good on your images and you're struggling to get good results from them. Just open up the preset intensity slider, slide some things around, and I almost guarantee you'll get better results 99% of the time. Now, adding borders, especially white borders, to your images on Instagram, for example, is a trend I've seen starting to perform super well, especially in carousel posts. So I want to show you exactly how you can do that inside of Lightroom Mobile, and it's all done in the export tool. So let's say we are finished with this edit and we now want to export this, but we want to have this image ready for the Instagram feed, which we should all know by now is the aspect ratio of 4:5. Now, I know for a fact that this image here is 16:9, so it's going to get hit with a heavy crop if I try and post this to Instagram. But there is a way around this that I've been using, and I have been loving the look on my feed, and that's to be using white borders. And you can add that straight inside of the Lightroom mobile app, and it only takes about 5 seconds to do while you're exporting your photo. So what we want to do is come over to the top right hand corner to the little export button right here, and then we want to come down to add border and share. And this is where we can now customize the border, how thick we want it to be, and most importantly, what aspect ratio we want the final image to be in. So if we are wanting to upload this photo to Instagram, we can come over to 4:5 down in the border size, which Lightroom has conveniently added the small little Instagram logo. We can tap on this, and just like that, we now have an image that is going to be 4:5 when we export it, but of course our original image is inside of that. And then something I like to play around with as well is the border thickness, which almost, if we reduce this to 0, just gives us nothing on the top or the bottom. And of course this will change if you're exporting, I guess, depending on the aspect ratio you're exporting on, but also the original aspect ratio of your image as well. And then as we increase this, you can see we get a little bit more padding around the edges. So I would say for me, I really like the look of just a little bit, just ever so slightly, a little bit on the top and the bottom. And then of course we've got those nice white bars on the side. And then all we've got to do is hit export and you're good to go. Now, if you shoot photos on your iPhone quite a lot, there's one setting that you should always be turning on when you're editing inside of Lightroom Mobile that is going to make your images just look a little bit more true to life and less like a photo. And this is in the optics tab, and it's called lens correction. The idea here is that when you take a photo, there is a little bit of distortion created by your camera's lens that it kind of gets added to your shot, and it could make it feel a little bit bubbly or a little bit poppy. And you'll definitely notice this when you're using the ultra wide camera on your iPhone. But there's one really easy way to correct this, and all we've got to do is open up the edit tab and then make our way into optics, and then just toggle on lens correction. Now, if I just toggle that off and back on, you can see the size of the camera actually gets a little bit bigger, and a handful of other little things around the corners of the edges of our image gets changed as well. But by far the main difference is the size of the camera, and all we're doing here is removing any distortion from our shot that was created from the lens that we shot the photo on. Now let's get into something that Lightroom has always struggled with, which is removing things from your image. I've always found that Photoshop could absolutely nail removing things from your shot, but Lightroom, for some weird reason, because it's by the same company, always sort of struggled just a little bit more. But Lightroom has definitely made some big improvements, so I want to show you exactly how to use them. Let's come over to this little eraser tool in the bottom right-hand corner. And then there is one main toggle that you want to either be aware that you do or don't have on. And that is in the bottom left-hand corner, generative AI. I find that generative AI fill definitely gets you the best results, but it's not always necessary. For example, let's turn it off for now and let's zoom in on our shot right here. You can see I've got a little bit of dust on the lens, so I can reduce the size of the eraser and then I can just tap on those dots and they're pretty much gone immediately, which is great. But let's say I wanted to get rid of this, let's undo that. Let's say I wanted to get rid of this silver A on the far left corner of our shot. Then we're gonna increase the size of our remove tool to make sure it's bigger than the A. Then we can come over here, make sure that we're giving that A just a little bit of a buffer, and then we're gonna let go and let the AI wizards do their magic. The thing is, this takes a lot longer than the normal remove tool. And just like that, we've been able to remove our A and things look very, very good. If we zoom out here, you would never know that anything was missing from this shot. And I find that a lot of the times the generative remove inside of Lightroom Mobile is incredibly strong and incredibly good. But when you're just removing a handful of small things that are very, very small, there's no need to use the generative remove as it just slows down your workflow a lot. All right, now we're getting to the tail end of this video. However, there are still two more things I want to run you through, but they're going to be pretty quick. So the first one is a quick before and after of your shot. I'm a huge fan of tracking my edit and making sure that I'm not pushing things too far or I haven't made any adjustments whatsoever. And a really easy way to do this is to simply tap and hold on your image. It'll then show you a before and then release, and it will show you an after. This is really, really easy to do, and I find myself doing this countless times during my edit. And then last but not least is the white balance dropper. A lot of the time when we take photos, our cameras don't 100% nail our white balance. So colors, especially skin tones, can start looking a little bit off, but there's one really, really easy way to fix this, and that's by opening up the color tab and then coming over to the white balance tool, which is already open. And then there's this little dropper button right here on the right-hand side. We want to tap on that, and then we want to choose one of three things: something that should be pure white, something that should be pure gray, or something that should be pure black. For this example, let's just use the lens, which is pure black. So we're just going to put that over our lens right there. We're going to hit the tick, and then things have been ever so slightly changed. It hasn't even registered on our temperature or tint slider here, and that's because this was already more or less shot with perfect white balance. However, if you try this out on a shot that definitely does not have perfect white balance, meaning it's either too warm or too cool, then you're going to notice a pretty big change. Anyway, guys, that is going to wrap up today's video. If you want to continue learning about photography, photo editing, video, and video editing, you can go ahead and check out this video right here, and I'll see you over there.